Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Inspiration Session. I'd like to greet His Holiness, Krishna Kshetra Swami. Thank you so much for joining us. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. My name is Gugulethu Mahlangu and I'm your host for the session. His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami is a teacher, a writer, and traveler. He's a disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON. He has served as a missionary, temple, priest, pujari, and counselor for Bhakti Yoga practitioners from the time of his formal initiation in 1972. From 1972 to 1976, he was based in Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Then he began to participate in Vaishnava missionary activities in Central Europe. Almost every year, from 1978 to 1995, he visited India on pilgrimage. In 1995, as coordinator of a research group, he compiled and published Pancha Ratra Pradipa in 2 volumes, a manual for Chaitanya Vaishnava temple worship. He also served ISKCON's GBC as the Minister for Deity Worship from then until 2005. In 2004, after 8 years of university study, resuming his interrupted studies from 1972, he received a PhD degree from the University of Oxford, St. Cross College, for his dissertation on Chaitanya Vaishnava image worship, which is now available from Routledge Publishers as Attending Krishna's Image, Chaitanya Vaishnava Murti Siva, as Devotional Truth in 2006. Krishna Kshetra Swami is now a research fellow at the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. He also teaches at Bhaktivedanta College, Radhadesh, since 2002. He recently taught survey courses in Indian religions and Asian religions in the religion department at the University of Florida, Gainesville. Beginning in September 2007, he began teaching at Chinese University of Hong Kong, courses in Indian religion and culture. After a full year of teaching, he then continued to teach 1 semester per year for the next 4 years. Since then, he has been giving lectures at several universities in the People's Republic of China. Amidst academic work, he also travels extensively, teaching about spiritual life as comprehended in the Vaishnava devotional Bhakti tradition, coming from Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Before we start our Sunday inspiration session, we just have a few house rules. Kindly switch and keep your cameras on so we may have a welcoming and personable session. All mics are muted and will remain so until 9:45 EST for questions and comments. And please raise your hand to be unmuted and feel free to type your questions and comments on YouTube and Facebook or in the Zoom chat panel as we go along, and they will be attended to thereafter. Thank you, Maharaj. We can start our session.
Here. Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you for having me on your Sunday morning program. Good morning to everyone. Thank you all for joining. I'm happy to be here. And as I understand, I'm being asked to talk about 2 subjects. The one that is announced on the poster is about branding in relation to Hinduism. And then this may relate to how a particular book which I've written and published is titled. The title is Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics. But I don't know whether you want to do this more as an interview or you want me more to simply speak. Please let me know. Bhaktin Google too.
No, Maharaj, please feel free to speak. It's not an interview. Share whatever it is. Yes.
Okay. Well, in that case, let me begin with the book. And this can be a little bit of a promotion, if you like, because the book is available without charge for digital download. It's been published in such a way, open access, that everyone can download the book free of charge. Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics. So a little history about how it came that I wrote the book. You've mentioned that I'm a research fellow of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. I'm also a fellow of the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics. And this is a group of scholars. There are over 100 fellows of this institute all over the world. And the director of this center for animal ethics requested me more than once, could I please write a book on Hinduism and animal ethics for his book series that he edits with this particular publisher, Palgrave Macmillan. And eventually he convinced me that this would be a good thing for me to do. His specific request was to address what is generally known as Hinduism with respect to animal ethics, or the whole subject of how we as human beings relate with how we should relate. Ethics implies a normative principle, that is, a sense of obligation or a sense of what should be done. And so, although his initial request to me was for a more general book on Hinduism and animal ethics, when I suggested to focus on cows in particular, because a very, very major connection is made between or by Hindus with what's called Go Raksha, or cow protection. If I would focus on cows, could I write a book on this subject? And he was very happy for me to do so, with this, so to say, condition. It should still connect in some explicit way with Hinduism. So that's what I've done in the book. At the same time, I make it quite clear in the introduction to the book that the term Hindu is complicated. And so what I am especially interested in this topic of animal ethics and cows is, what is it that is regarded to be so special about cows? And yes, what is it that brings this association with Hinduism, especially considering that the scriptures which refer to cows and cow protection and cows as being in some ways special do not themselves have any knowledge of the word Hindu. So, for example, the Bhagavad Gita, we don't find anywhere the word Hindu in the Bhagavad Gita. And for that matter, in the whole of the Mahabharata, nor in the Dharma Shastras, what to speak of the Upanishads and the Vedic Samhitas. This word doesn't exist at all. And so then we can look at the history of the word Hindu, which many of you may be familiar with. And now it's become now in recent years, it's become quite commonly known among scholars, the history of the term Hindu, and then even much later, the term Hinduism, as being Hindu, as being a term of reference by persons outside of the subcontinent of what we now call India, especially in the northwest of India, referring to those on the other side of the Indus River, or the Sindhu, as Hindu. And so it was a term not of religion so much as a geographical term of the persons who live in a particular geographical area. The word Hindu does appear in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that means that by the early 17th century, which is to say something less than a century after the departure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the word Hindu is known, and possibly earlier, but it's one of the earliest known references of the term Hindu. It's interesting that it's found in our Vaishnava literature, and there it's used in specific contexts to contrast or to make a distinction between those referred to as Hindu and those considered non-Hindu, who are referred to generally as Yavana and sometimes as Mleccha. The general sense being that the Hindus are those who follow this so-called social system of Varna and Ashrama, and the others who do not, which includes but is not exclusively referring to Muslims. It can also refer possibly to Adivasis and others of generally identified as having cultural origins outside of the South Indian subcontinent. So that's where we get the word Hindu. And then I haven't myself personally dug into this history in detail, but my understanding is the term Hinduism emerged out of the British presence in India, identifying for them a religious category. This now becomes a category of religion as opposed to simply a geographical distinction. And this ties in with a very complex history of the study of religion, which developed starting in the late 19th century, going into through the 20th century, the notion of world religions. Okay, so that's a little about Hindu and Hinduism. And we can say, therefore, that both terms have been imported into India and into Indian cultural landscape, if you like. And it's been adopted, it's been accepted, it's been integrated into Indian thought, such that so many people in India now identify themselves as Hindu and identify their religion as Hinduism. Okay, now let's shift a little bit and look at what Srila Prabhupada said about Hinduism and Hindu. And I'll just speak generally. We could, refer to so many specific quotes, but the general point to be made is simply that Prabhupada did not identify with this term. He did not see himself as Hindu. He would, of course, use the term Vaishnava. He would refer to Varnashrama Dharma. He would refer to Sanatana Dharma. And sometimes he would say, we are not at all interested in Hinduism or Hindu. In one conversation, he speaks of so-called Hindus. And the general point that he wants to make is that the designation Hindu is just that. It's a designation, and as such, it is a temporary designation. And he would sometimes include the term Hindu in a list. So he would speak of Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc., Jewish, perhaps Buddhist he would refer to. All of these as essentially external to our spiritual identity, our permanent identities as servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and this understanding is throughout Srila Prabhupada's teachings, which of course he is representing, he is repeating what we find in our Vaishnava literature, specifically Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would recite a prayer during the Ratha Yatra in Puri. Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaishona shudro naham varni nacha griyapatir novanasto yatirva kintu prodyan nikila paramahananda purnamrita der gopi bartu padakamayor dasa dasa anudasa. He emphasizes, I am the servant of the servant of the Lord of the Gopis, and I am not a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihasta, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. So he's making that distinction, and this is, of course, our core understanding. And we want to be clear about this for ourselves as practitioners of bhakti yoga. Or put it another way, we may not be entirely clear of this because we do identify ourselves with various temporary designations. This is how it is in this world. We have grown up with so many designations. So to simply throw them all out the window one morning, deciding, okay, I am none of those designations whatsoever, may not happen. It may not, we may find that we are not able to. And furthermore, we understand from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that we all have needs on various levels. We have psychological needs, we have social needs in particular, and especially with respect to social needs, we find it necessary to accept, to acknowledge various designations. So we work internally toward going beyond those designations to our eternal identity as servant of the Lord. And at the same time, we work with various designations to fulfill social needs and obligations with others. And we can say that in particular, the Dharma Shastras are addressing those needs. And so we find in Dharma Shastra, and I would say more broadly, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana also are very much addressing these needs and addressing the Purusharthas, which we all, as long as we have material bodies, will be concerned with: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. All of these concerns will be there. And in the context of recognizing these needs, we may find it necessary, we may find it sometimes beneficial for us to identify with specific social, or we can say religious designations. An example of this is in relation to something I've just finished writing about. I was commissioned to write an article on ISKCON and the Hindu diaspora. So I had to think a lot about this particular subject. And part of my focus of that article is a bit of history about Bhaktivedanta Manor, the very significant establishment temple just outside of London, northwest of London. And again, as some of you may know, they had quite some struggle over a period of overall about 10 years, from 1986 to 1996. They had quite some struggle with the local village people, residents, and this was over the fact that more and more visitors were coming to Bhaktivedanta Manor, the vast majority of whom were Hindu diaspora, that is, coming from Indian background and having Indian ancestral origin, although many of them were coming from East Africa more immediately. These were immigrants to the UK. More and more were coming, and they were parking their cars all around the village. It's a quite small village. And this was becoming a disturbance. And so they started making complaints, and one thing led to another. It's a long story. One scholar has written an entire book just on this subject. The point being that the devotees, in order to defend their position of allowing people to come visit, to have darshan of Shishi Radha Gokulananda, they took a great deal of help from the Hindu community. Put another way, in some sense, they, the Manor, in their what came to be called the Manor campaign, in effect, were very instrumental in creating a Hindu community in Great Britain, bringing a kind of self-consciousness to them, which had been, let's say, more fragmented with the various, anyway, coming from different, from different castes, different jatis, having other kinds of identification, perhaps, than Hindu as such. So the Manor found that in order to defend themselves, they needed to mobilize people in such a way that the officials would take the position of the Manor seriously. And they were very successful. And it's also quite interesting how it happened. Much of this campaign was spearheaded by the Hindu youth, young people, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, when they became alerted to the danger that Bhaktivedanta Manor would be closed, they said, we're going to fight this. And how they fought, they were very enthusiastic and creative. They went into the village square, the public village square of this village, Lechmore Heath, and they set up an altar with pictures of Krishna, and I don't know if they had deities, Gornitai, but they made like a temporary altar and performed a public worship of Krishna in the public square. And they had signs that were saying, we are being thrown out of our temple. We're not being allowed to worship in our temple. So we don't have a place to worship. So we're doing it here. What do you think about that? And so this called media attention, and one thing led to another. There were court cases, legal, back and forth, lawyers. This went on for 10 years. And eventually concluded with a completely amicable solution. Bhaktivedanta Manor was given the opportunity to purchase additional land in the back of their property, enabling them to make an access road from another road, so that people would not have to come through the village and would not have to park in the village. So it was a completely happy solution ultimately for everyone. Since then, residents of the village have come to be quite friendly with the manor. The manor has made a very, how to say, they've been very focused to encourage, they invite the villagers, they have special days when they invite them, and they have nice programs with them and so on. Okay, all of that was simply to make this point that sometimes, in some circumstances, it may be completely appropriate for devotees of Krishna to, the term branding is used, so I'll use that also, to brand themselves as Hindu. Yeah, another example of this we may mention in Oxford, we have the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. It began as the Oxford Center for Vaishnava Studies. But then the well-wishers of our center from Oxford University said, you know, nobody knows what is Vaishnava, but people know the word Hindu. Mm-hmm. So then we said, okay, we'll make it the Center for Vaishnava and Hindu Studies. So for some time, we were the Center for Vaishnava and Hindu Studies. But still, this question would come up, okay, Hindu, yes, I know something vaguely, but Vaishnava, what is this Vaishnava? That's something different from Hindu? And then this called for explanations that would sometimes leave people no more enlightened than before the conversation. So then finally it was decided, okay, Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. And within the Center for Hindu Studies, one of the foci that we have is Vaishnava studies. We also have scholars who study Shaktism or Shaivism or so many other different sorts or aspects of Hindu traditions. So that's one possible way of understanding. Perhaps, though, I should get back to the book that started all of this, Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics. As most of you who are listening will know, Srila Prabhupada did put a lot of emphasis on cow protection, and he quoted Bhagavad Gita that one of the functions of Vaishyas is Go Raksha. And he encouraged devotees to establish farm communities, which should have as integral to those projects, there should be cows. And these cows were to be maintained very nicely, to be cared for nicely, and to be kept throughout their natural lives. The cows would give milk. The bulls would be trained to pull the plow such that grains could be grown. And thus, he said, essentially, if you have these two products, grains and milk, you are prosperous. So there have been attempts, and there are still ongoing projects of cow protection in our society. The more recent count of the total number of cows presently in ISKCON is about 5,000. Of these, around 4,000 are in India, and the remaining 1,000 are scattered amongst altogether how many did we count, close to 100 projects worldwide where cows are cared for. Again, most of them being in India. Well, part of my impetus for writing this book was the feeling that despite the fact that we have so many strong statements from Srila Prabhupada that this is important, there is and despite the fact that other devotees have written more on the subject of the importance of cow protection, I felt there's still something to be done in this area, namely, for lack of a better word, a more academic study of the history, I should say also the prehistory of cows, what I prefer to call cow care in Hindu or in Indian traditions, and to give a survey of what are the challenges and what are the positive aspects of present day cow care. For that purpose, I spent some time mainly in India, traveling in North India, visiting goshalas, one very large goshala in the southwest of Rajasthan, Patmeda. Other goshalas, much smaller, a few hundred cows, or one goshala in Gurugram that Sugopi Tunga Vidya Devi knows. We visited there together. They have some 3,000 cows. Some ISKCON projects, including Sridham Mayapur, which has something over 300 cows, cows meaning cows and bulls, and also addressing some of the issues of cow protection, especially the economics, which I touch on in quite minimal way. To seriously delve into the economics would have to be another book, probably requiring someone with more expertise in the area of agricultural economics than I would have. So I also wanted to sketch out what would be the ideal situation of cow care and cow protection. And this I do in the final chapter, or next to final chapter. No, it's, what is it, the final minus one concluding chapter. And I did this, maybe I can end what I'm speaking now before we take questions. I have a section called 6 Affirmations on the Dharma of Cow Care. And I can just quickly go through these 6 affirmations. You may know this term affirmation is sometimes used as a psychological process to help oneself to develop good habits of thought in particular. So I frame this as affirmations, the first being titled Cow Care and Care. So I put this in a sort of present tense, although it's not really happening. I say, this is what's happening. So I say, we have instituted a certification system through a network similar to that of worldwide organic farming, to monitor and ensure that all institutions and individuals who care for cows and wish to have the monitoring agency's seal of approval must follow minimum standards summarized in the 5 basic rules of care system for lifetime care of animals. Now, this 5 basic rules of the care system has been proposed by another scholar in Germany who has done some very interesting research on this subject. I'll jump to the next. I elaborate more on that first one, but I'm just giving a little taste. The second one, second principle of affirmation is cow care and fairness. A comprehensive monitoring system ensures that any physical products or byproducts from bovines are obtained only under strict conditions of respectful and caring treatment. I mention this because one of the criticisms of the vegan movement against those who take dairy, even against those who take dairy from only protected cows, is that the cows are not really properly treated. So what I'm saying in this book is it's possible to treat cows as mother, as Prabhupada would so many times say, the cow is our mother. So to have to really have that understanding, and then to see the bull as father, to have that understanding is a prerequisite for what we are talking about in terms of cow care. Then the third principle is cow care and liberty, where I say cow care activists recognize that all people are at liberty to follow the diet of their choice within various sorts of constraints. So we're not making some kind of, how to say, like a fascist demand. We say, if they are accustomed to eating meat, we encourage them and explain reasons for reducing meat consumption, and we appreciate and applaud the work of any environmental activism that explicitly confronts the environmental cost of carnism. And of course, the idea is to help people to shift from carnism, from a diet that is based on meat or is including meat, to a vegetarian diet. And I say also, we also urge anyone consuming dairy to source their dairy products from cow care families and institutions that are authorized based on the first principle that I gave, that they have a seal of approval, that they're properly caring for the cows. Persons unable to source ahimsa dairy are encouraged to move toward this goal in a progressive manner. And I have a footnote which elaborates what that progressive manner would be. But I'll go now to the fourth principle, which is cow care and loyalty. All of these principles are with respect to a particular scholar's analysis of 6 fundamental principles of morality which enter into the political sphere. And that's why I'm using them, because There's a lot of politics around cow care. So cow care and loyalty says, loyalty of cow carers to their own nations is encouraged, as is loyalty to their particular communities. Dharma-based cow carer culture is such that these loyalties are not energized by antagonism against other nations or communities. What I want to say here is that people in India who want to protect cows, that's fine. You want to identify yourself as Indian, that's fine. It's quite reasonable, and it's reasonable to feel loyalty to the nation. You want to feel yourself as identifying with being Hindu, so making yourself a member of a Hindu community. That's also fine. What I'm saying with this is that does not give a basis. I protect cows and therefore I am antagonistic as a Hindu, as an India, against those who don't protect cows. I may not approve, I may deplore, but I cannot make them my enemies. This is the basic principle that Gandhi articulated, Mahatma Gandhi. Rather, by caring for cows, these persons make a deep connection with the earth and their environment in such ways that they cultivate knowledge in the quality of goodness and illumination, as described in Bhagavad Gita, and I give some quotes. In turn, this knowledge nurtures cow carers' dedication to the bovines in their charge. So we're still talking about loyalty. Such that they do all that is necessary for the bovines, the cows in their charge, bovines to be cared for properly for life, thus never to have their trust in their carers betrayed. So loyalty means that the cows are given reasons to give their trust to their carers. So they will never be betrayed by their carers. And again, I have more on that subject. The fifth one is cow care and authority. Authority in relation to cow care is specifically located first and foremost in persons with extensive experience in all aspects of cow care, including cow-based organic agriculture. Indeed, these persons are recognized and accredited as teachers of cow care in learning institutions connected with cow care centers and cow-based organic farms and village communities throughout the world. And some more elaboration on that. I speak about processes and institutions of education, how that could develop. And that's something we are beginning in the Ministry for Cow Protection and Agriculture, ISKCON's ministry. Some work is being done on courses where you can learn how to manage a goshala, for example. And so it's not a matter of just, oh, Bhakta so-and-so, you're not very good on book distribution. Let's put you in charge of the goshala. No. First, you have to be trained. So where do I get the training? Well, presently, it's kind of hit and miss. So we want to provide that training. And 6, the final point, and then I will stop, final affirmation, is cow care and sanctity. Those who care for cows regard them as bearers of sanctity, in that they are unique in their ways of creaturely being in the world, such that humans can care for them. For many Hindus, cows are special because they are regarded as especially dear to the supreme divinity, Krishna. Therefore, they are practiced to give cows special attention. Such special attention is not at the cost of other creatures. Indeed, in the bovine family, Krishna is said to have a pet buffalo. And I quote Gandhi here. He says, quote, "We can realize our duty toward the animal world and discharge it by wisely pursuing our dharma of service to the cow. At the root of cow protection," Gandhi says, "is the realization of our dharma toward the subhuman species." Unquote. And I go on with a bit more to that 6th principle. Okay, that's a little bit about cow care in Hindu animal ethics. You can read the whole book. You can search the title and you will find the publisher's website, on which is a button to click. You can also order the hardbound, or now also softbound is available. But open access, free download, digital is available, and you can read the whole book. And I'm always happy to get feedback on the book, to hear. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Hare Krishna. I think I should stop there and see if there's some question or some discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, Maharaj, for the Sunday inspiration and for encouraging us to start our food communities where we grow our own foods. And I personally related to that the most because I just love agriculture. Okay, so okay, so we're just gonna give 15 minutes for Q&A. So if there's anyone who wants to say something to Maharaj or ask or comment, please, you can unmute yourself and ask, or rather just send a text or question on the chat box.
I see already Sabyasachi proposed a question.
Okay. Okay, Maharaj, you can. It? Okay, I will read it. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your lucid class. Question 1. How do we remedy a situation where the Krishna consciousness movement is catering almost entirely to those who identify culturally as Hindus and creating an isolating atmosphere for those who come in and do not culturally identify as Hindus?
Yes, that's a very good question, and it's very well put. To reply to this, I'm going to quote from a sannyasi godbrother of mine who has thought about this carefully and who has written about it. And it's just one paragraph. It goes like this. The problem with ISKCON temples that have predominantly Indian-born congregations is not that they are exclusively projecting Indian culture and values, but that there's a lack of diversity in the community, and that has made Westerners uncomfortable. Also, those temples, if their objective is to indeed create a diverse congregation, seem to lack some understanding of how and when to present the elements of Indian culture and tradition that Srila Prabhupada introduced. This holds equally true for temples in the West whose members are not predominantly Indian and are also unsuccessful in expanding their Western-born base. Of course, he's speaking, this was written in United States, and looking at that situation, South Africa, I don't know the situation. I've never been to South Africa. But perhaps in some respects, this applies. As you may or may not know, there has been a lot of discussion on this issue, and some efforts are made. You may know of the Krishna West project, which was started by His Holiness Sri Dayananda Goswami. He has been specifically trying to sort of shift the, how to say, the center of gravity. I would put it like this, to shift the cultural center of gravity away from what he sees as non-essentials of Indian culture, non-essential to Krishna consciousness. And he has a website, and you can see, or they have a website, I should say, what sorts of things they are doing. But also, and this may be more relevant for Africa, I don't know if they are also active in South Africa, but there is the International Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology. I think they're in West Africa, but I don't know about South Africa. It's the late His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami started the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology in Washington, DC. And he had a similar concern that, okay, we're attracting many people of Indian origin. That's all right. That's, how to say, we want everyone to take up Krishna consciousness. But what about everyone else? And himself coming from African-American background, he was also specifically concerned about Africa. And as you probably know very well, he was very successful in his preaching in Africa, including South Africa. So you probably know more about that history than I do. To shift I think what we want to do, because I spoke in this article, I wrote in this article about cultural atmosphere, where sort of different groups are sharing a cultural atmosphere. What I see is the need to make more space, to make the atmosphere inclusive, and to show that indeed Krishna is for everyone. This is what Srila Prabhupada said in one conversation in Bhaktivedanta Manor, which I also quote. He says, Krishna is for everyone. The more we meditate on that mantra, if you like. I think Krishna will give us intelligence, how to make adjustments in details. We don't want to change any principles, but details can be adjusted for the purpose of attracting people to Krishna. And I think the more we recognize that, the more we see how details can be adjusted without jeopardizing principles and without being an anxiety that we're rejecting principles, the more progress we can make. It's a big topic, so I'll be brief.
Okay, thank you so much, Maharaj. Savi, I hope that answers your question. We have a hand raised from Saradia Rasa. Saradia, do you want to unmute your mic or show yourself and ask a question?
Hare Krishna. My signal is not that great, so I'm just going to stay off camera. But thank you for allowing me to ask the question. Maharaj, firstly, thank you very much for your talk. I especially appreciated everything that you've done, for cow protection. And I do think it's definitely an essential aspect that we need to take much more seriously and give much more attention to in the future. So for that, I'm very grateful. At the same time, I want to play a bit of a devil's advocate role. And I think what is important is that we need to acknowledge that when devotees or ISKCON, uses that Hindu identity, it might serve certain causes and serve certain groups. But I think we cannot deny the fact that it excludes others. I personally lived in the UK and I was part of the Bhaktivedanta Manor community, and I'm also aware of the history, and I understand why in that particular instance, it was really serving the cause to take on that identity. But at the same time, there's been repercussions for that. If we look at that community, it is, almost 100% exclusively Indian. And I've lived there, and there is only like a small generation, of devotees who are not only Indian, and many generations in between, there's basically like no Europeans. And the ones that are there are usually from Russia or from Eastern Europe. And on several occasions, I met, local people, older local people, and they said exact same thing for me, although they were not connected to each other. And, it was different occasions. And every single one said to me, I've been coming to the temple for many years. And I love the devotees. I love Kirtan, I love Prasadam, but I cannot become a Hare Krishna. And when I asked them why, they said because it's a Hindu religion. So by taking on that identity, they have effectively excluded, and also I would say even alienated, the local population. And when in the UK, which is very cosmopolitan, we're not only talking about like people of European descent, but also everyone else. So I just think that is important. We cannot ignore that there might be some gain, but there's also a loss. I think we have to start acknowledging, who that identity is excluding.
Thank you.
I don't think it's not only in the UK that's happening. So I think that is something that needs to be discussed more openly and addressed more openly. And we have to consider what is it doing to ISKCON's identity.
Yes. Thank you. You've said it well. I agree completely with everything you've said. And I don't think I could add anything without sort of veering off and taking up time which we don't have. I think the key is two words. You said acknowledging, or maybe acknowledging, you said we need to acknowledge this, and then we need to discuss. So what do we do about it? What's interesting though is I've also met Indian origin devotees in the UK who are members of this manor community, who are exactly concerned in the same way. They say, you know, we don't want to just be Hindu. We are, it has to be for everyone. Krishna is for everyone. And they're very concerned about this. So that's also there.
Okay, thank you so much, Saradia, for your comments and observations. We also have another question, Maharaj, that from, sorry, I'm just scrolling up. From Pandava. He says, Maharaj, you mentioned Chaitanya Charitamrita that term Hindu is found for the first time. Can you tell where is it?
Oh, well, first, I'm not sure it's completely the first time. I know it's one of the first. It's one of the earliest, because one scholar who spent decades studying Gaudiya Vaishnavism, a Western scholar, pointed this out. But it's one of the earliest. In one place is in the discussion between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Qazi. That's the one I can be fairly sure it's there. It's been a while since I've looked at this, but the places to look are where there's any interaction with, and the term Muslim is never used. The term Yavana is used, and Mlecha, and Prabhupada sometimes translates as meat eaters, the meat eaters. So look in those places, and there you may find the word Hindu in the Bengali.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Pandava. We're going to move on to Dira Lalita. She just made a comment and said that she's sorry she has to go to work, but she'd like to thank you, Maharaj, for the class and the devotees from Africa who organized it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Sugopi. She says that the beauty of ISKCON is that we have so many different communities from across the world, and it is our responsibility to maintain this beauty by acting together as a big family, which I agree with. Thank you so much, Sugopi.
I couldn't say it better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sugopi, for that. Mandla is saying, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. We usually hear that the Hindu title has no formal existence or appearance in the revealed scriptures. That is a collective misnomer that cannot properly define the experience of said Hinduism. Is it not safe to say that the institution of Hinduism does indeed exist, and therefore defined itself as given description by the misnomer itself?
It's true that it's an interesting phenomenon that something which previously was diffuse gets a designation, and then the designation catches on and becomes a force for crystallizing what people then understand to be Hinduism. So that's happened very much from the 19th century on. That's happened in India, very much as a response to, very much as a reaction to colonialism, British colonialism. So we could say, you know, if we wanted to put dates on it, we could say it started with Ram Mohan Roy in the early 19th century. He was concerned, and he decided to, he felt that what was being practiced in India and was being labeled more or less as Hindu, he felt a lot of it was not proper Hinduism. he pretty much threw out all of the Puranas and said the real Hinduism is in the Upanishads. And then he established his organization, the Brahma Samaj. And that's another long history. And then philosophically, in the later 19th century and into the early 20th century, there was a felt need to have a sort of clear Hindu theology. And it came about, and that's been written about. Scholars have, I know one scholar's written a book on this subject of how it happened that Hinduism, so-called, became identified with Advaita Vedanta. That's also a recent development, and it developed through specific writings of specific persons with a specific purpose. They wanted something that could be, shall we say, easily packaged for the wider world. That was their idea. There's a history to all of that. Okay, so much more could be said, but Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your time, for your knowledge, and thank you to everybody who joined us.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We just want to remind the devotees to follow you, Maharaj. Maharaja can be found on social media at Kenneth Valpi, am I saying that right? On
Yes.
Facebook, and at Krishna Kshetra Swami _official in Instagram, where you can like and follow his page. You can also visit his website at www.krks.name to find out more and keep up with his work and various projects. You can also kindly visit, like, share, and follow WUSA social media platforms that include Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at WUSA108. Please help us get 1,000 follows and subscriptions and more. And we also would like to thank you guys for your support. We're also happy to announce that our morning Japa sessions are back. So the details around the daily program will be communicated in the WUSA weekly WhatsApp group. You can join the weekly WhatsApp group via link at www.wusa.online so that you can receive regular activity updates and communications. In B, this group is for quick announcements and will not be used for spam, so only admins will post in the group. We are also happy and excited to announce that our books are the basis book club, is up and running. So catch us every Thursday evening for the jam-packed reading and sharing of realization sessions via Zoom. Visit www.wusa.online to find out more and join the WUSA weekly WhatsApp group to keep updated and participate in this exciting program. On that note, a quick update on the fundraiser for the WUSA Preaching Initiative. The Sankirtan bus has been ticked off the WUSA wish list. And the WUSA House Yoga is nearing completion. So we'd just like to thank everyone who opened their hearts out to donate towards this preaching effort. The bus was the first item on the WUSA wish list of items needed to mobilize the preaching effort. We still have a long way to go, so please kindly visit www.wusa.online to download the wish list from our donations page and our sites. For more information, you're welcome to contact us via email at admin@wusa.online. So thank you everybody for the class. Thank you, Maharaj. And this is where we end our lovely Sunday inspiration. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Haribol.
Haribol.